Senator Waters.
Thanks, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Amendment Declared Commercial Fishing Activities Bill 2012. And I rise as a Queensland Senator concerned that the Margiris, now insultingly renamed the Abel Tasman, although I'll continue to call it the Margiris, is now licensed and flagged in my home port of Brisbane. Now, Queenslanders, like many Australians, have been outraged at the potential for the Margiris to denude Australian waters of fish. Certainly my email inbox has been overflowing with such concern, and with good reason. The massive 9,500-tonne, 142-metre Supertrawler is twice the size of the largest trawler that's ever fished in Australian waters. This boat has the capacity to catch more than 90,000 tonnes of fish every single year. Australians' oceans have never been subjected to an onslaught like this. Now, supertrawlers around the world have trashed local marine environments. They've destroyed vital food chains by clearing the local environments of tonnes of baitfish, and they've left a wake of dead dolphins, seals and turtles, in addition to untold volumes of other bycatch species. Fishing communities, some marine scientists and a whole host of community organisations have asked to see more work done on the science backing supertrawlers, especially in the area of potential local depletion of fish stocks from this huge fish vacuum cleaner. So in the Greens' view, the onus of proof must be reversed. Supertrawlers must be banned until the best possible science has proven that supertrawlers aren't causing untold damage that the community is so concerned about. Now, the Australian Greens put forward amendments to this bill in the House, which sadly didn't get up, which would have made it an offence for ships capable of processing and storing more than 2,000 tonnes of biomass to fish in Australian waters. Now, obviously, the Margiris is the only ship with a storage capacity of 2,000 tonnes or more, so therefore this was an effective permanent ban on the Supertrawler. All other fishing vessels currently operating in Australian waters would not have been affected by this ban. Now, the Minister's bills before the Senate allows a ban of up to 2 years. But sadly, this means that our oceans only get a brief relief from the Margiris, whereas the solution put forward by the Greens would give our oceans permanent protection from mammoth fishing operations like this. But I want to talk tonight about the selective application of the precautionary principle by this government. Our national environmental laws say that major decisions which involve a high risk of causing irreversible harm to our precious species in wild places should be made in accordance with the precautionary principle. Now, it's commendable that in this instance, this principle seems to have been guiding the government's approach. In announcing these changes last Tuesday, Minister Burke said that he was seeking to amend national environmental laws to give him the powers that he'd hoped to have, to be able to, I quote, to be able to apply a much more precautionary approach to the Supertrawler. And he set out that the purpose of the amendment was to ensure that the federal government could intervene to better protect our fisheries where there is uncertainty about the impact of a particular fishing activity. The process rolls out where this uncertainty is identified. The process would then allow the Environment and the Fisheries departments to jointly undertake that scientific work and seek out the expert advice which the government believes is lacking. And most importantly, while that work is being undertaken, the relevant fishing activity cannot take place within Australian waters for a period of up to 2 years. That is, you press pause while you do the science. You don't let the activity roll out and you don't issue any new approvals while you're doing the science. And yet, unfortunately, this is the exception rather than the rule. Coal seam gas is a perfect example. The House has just today debated setting up an advisory committee on coal seam gas to do the science on coal seam gas as regards groundwater impacts. But approvals will not cease while that 5-year research program is being done. Now, this is despite the science that we do have around the impacts of coal seam gas saying that we lack understanding about long-term impacts on groundwater. For example, the National Water Commission says, quote, potential impacts of coal seam gas developments, particularly the cumulative impacts of multiple projects, are not well understood. They also say, quote, the Commission strongly argues for the careful, transparent and integrated consideration of water-related impacts in all approval processes. Likewise, CSIRO says, quote, predicting the long-term impacts of coal seam gas production can be difficult due to the potential cumulative and region-specific impacts of multiple developments. And CSIRO also says, quote, prediction of specific impacts of coal seam gas developments requires ongoing research because groundwater responses may take decades or even centuries to move through aquifers, especially when groundwater flow velocities are slow, end quote. Yet still, despite 68% of Australians wanting a moratorium until we have a better understanding of the long-term impacts of coal seam gas, the government has continually failed to take a precautionary approach, which I've moved for in several motions in this place and also in my amendments to that bill, which unfortunately got no support. So it appears that a precautionary approach, frankly, is a political tool to be used when pushed, rather than a principle to guide good, sensible decision-making in the face of huge threats to land and water. Unfortunately, it's the same with the Great Barrier Reef. UNESCO expressed grave concern for the survival of the reef, given the plans for 6 new and expanded coal and coal seam gas ports. And they've said that unless we change direction...
Order. Senator Waters, I've been listening carefully to your debate on this bill and remind you we are debating the bill related to the Supertrawler. Can I bring you back to that issue, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. That's precisely what I'm doing. I'm talking about the selective application of the precautionary principle, which I'm saying has been applied for the Supertrawler but not applied in countless other instances. So I'll continue. As I was saying, the UNESCO have said that unless we change direction on the reef, it will put the reef on the World Heritage in Danger list by March. So the government's response was to commit to a strategic assessment, which they say promised to ensure development proceeds in a way that our reef can survive, but it's got holes so big in it you can drive a coal ship through it. The strategic assessment won't be able to affect whether current developments, including those 6 ports, are approved. Project assessments and approvals will continue, business as usual. So time and time again, the Greens have called for a moratorium on reef port development until a decent strategic assessment is done, until we actually know what the reef and its delicate ecosystems can handle. Now, the government claims it can't put a moratorium on because it says it doesn't have the power. We disagree. But if the government is correct, why are they not moving to give themselves powers like they've done with the Margiris? Why doesn't the reef deserve a precautionary approach, as has been now taken with the Margiris? The uncertainties and the risks of irreversible harm are without question. The government continues to react in an ad hoc, populist way.
Senator Waters, point of order.
I think the honourable senator is actually defying your ruling before, Mr Acting Deputy President.
There's no point of order. Senator Waters.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. The government continues to react in an ad hoc, populist way, drawing on the precautionary principle when it suits it. And frankly, the reef has been hung out to dry, as have all of those rural communities facing coal seam gas. I want to return now to fisheries, and for all of the talk of stepping up to assure the sustainability of our fisheries, we're on the brink of a federal handover of national environmental responsibilities to AFMA, the Fisheries Management Authority. As part of its upcoming EPBC reforms, the government appears committed to amending our national environmental laws so that rather than having the final approval of strategic assessments of fisheries, the minister will simply accredit the systems of AFMA to allow them to assess and approve fisheries, not the Environment Minister. Now, this will mean that the government and the COAG approach to offload the Environment Minister's approvals to the states is going to be reflected now with fisheries management, in offloading that to AFMA. Now, this is a tragic development, and it will see major decisions that have the potential to trash our most valuable national environmental assets being made by state governments and fisheries agencies, not our National Environment Minister. This undermines 3 decades of work to build stronger environment protection in this country. And anyone asking what are the implementation risks, what are the risks to our environment of this handover, would know from looking at the atrocious record of the states and territories of late that this is a high-risk, totally non-precautionary approach taken by our government. So returning to the bill before the Senate, although our amendments would have made this bill stronger had they not been rejected, we will be supporting this bill. But the bill demonstrates that when the political risks are low, and when it's forced to by a circumstance, the government can in fact step up and act in a sensible way and apply the precautionary principle. The tragedy is that across Australia, our ecosystems and threatened species and our irreplaceable wilderness are facing a fight for their lives. And yet, where is the government responsible for protecting those values that we've agreed are of national importance? They're not seeking there to be informed about the best science. They're not prepared to press pause despite the enormous threats involved in barrelling ahead blindly. And they're not prepared to give our scientists and the experts the time to do the work that's needed to make sure that our biggest decisions are well informed about what's really at risk. And Australia's environment and our communities are suffering as a result. So in short, on too many of the key issues, the government is shirking its responsibilities. It's not stepping up and it's not showing the leadership that's needed. Not on the reef, not on coal seam gas, not on the protection of threatened species and ecosystems. So I call upon the government to apply the precautionary principle with consistency and to govern like the environment matters. Thank you.